Live should go. Oh, yes. Yes, we did it. Modern technology, just like that. There he is, Wes Siler in Montana. So great to meet you virtually and really excited to get to chat with you. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for being interested in public lands. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man, I've been thinking about this stuff for a really long time. I was one of those, when I found your work, I was kind of surprised I hadn't been following and supporting it. And everybody should go and support Wes on Substack. I'm going to add this little this banner up so everybody can see the address. I don't know why it's on me and not you, but go subscribe to Wes's Substack. It's really good. But I've been thinking about and talking to people about conservation, environment, and public lands for a really long time. Mostly folks working in the federal government. Not as many journalists, but a few. But your work is vitally important, and aren't a lot of people doing it. So maybe describe a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I didn't really set out to write about politics. I had a big career change, like in 2014. I used to do cars and motorcycles. I did a website called Jalopnik, did a motorcycle website called Hell for Leather. I never really set out to be a serious journalist, and I was sort of pivoting my career. I wanted to do more interesting, exciting stuff, personally. And Brian Lamb, the guy who founded the Wirecutter and was the editor-in-chief of Gizmodo, was like, "Hey, do outdoor stuff. I love what you write about outdoors." And I was like, "Oh man, is that a career? Sure, I'll do that." And so I started doing it. I started, writing about going backpacking and taking my dogs hiking, going camping and stuff. And through that, became aware that hey, the places where I like to go outdoors are under attack, and people are trying to take them away. And well, that's fucked up. So I think the first political article I ever wrote was in 2015, and there was a House amendment to steal national forests or something. And you're like, well, hey man, don't steal my national forests. And I just sort of ran with that and took it from there. And it's been popular. It's created some change, and I feel good about that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love to hear that it is popular and has created change. Back last year, I mean, the end of last year, was it, when you started your Substack? Heather Cox Richardson had you on her show and then just highlighted your work again. That must be a pretty amazing thing. She's like the biggest person in all of Substack and one of the biggest journalists in the country.
Yeah, my wife and I have been fans of Heather, since she's been doing letters from an American.
Yeah.
I started my Substack in January after Outside, where I've written for the last decade, banned me from covering politics. Yeah, there's a whole story there. You can read about it in the New Yorker. But yeah, they banned me from covering politics. So I started my Substack as a place where I could write freely without corporate oversight. I had never spoken to Heather before. Obviously, we read her stuff every single day. And she just reached out and was like, "Hey, you want to get on the phone?" And I was like, "Yes, Heather, I want to get on the phone."
Wow.
So it's just really flattering that she found me. And, it's been a huge help since, this project's been going 6 months now. I started taking it seriously in January.
That's great, man. I'm so glad to hear that. I always wonder if there's enough demand to sustain one person, much less a few people on an issue, whether you do it at Substack or YouTube or everywhere. And this is such an important issue. It's like one of the top issues, and people just don't understand it. They don't think about it. They certainly take it for granted. And I guess I could say conservation and environmentalism in general, obviously, but specifically talking about public lands and the federal government's role and all the politics about it. There's just not enough journalism. I mean, what do you think about the amount of journalism or type of journalism there is to cover it? Because if you can't write about it in Outside magazine, which I'm looking forward to reading about what happened there, then where do you get it published that anyone can see it? Independent journalism and all these new platforms have created opportunities, but what's the scope of people doing what you're doing?
There's really not much. I mean, I can name a bunch of other writers that do a great job, but nobody has this huge platform anymore. I've pitched articles about this stuff to the New York Times, the Washington Post, all that stuff with no interest whatsoever, and it's one of those topics that I think people in the mainstream media world look at and kind of feel like it gets lost in the weeds, but it's something that touches all of us. If you are going hiking or camping or hunting or off-roading or just want to see a pretty animal or a bird, you're relying on public lands for that. Even if you're not doing those things, just if you want clean air, clean water, abundant biodiversity, public lands are the reservoir from which all those things are drawn nationwide. So even if you see a deer on private land, the biodiversity ecosystem and healthy genetics that make that deer's life possible come from our nation's unique and abundant public land system. Without that, this just isn't really America, and it's not really going to have the places and the things that we value.
Isn't really America is a key point. I think one way to define America, I mean, I'm pretty critical of our systems, our politics, our media, our campaign finance, all of it. Our prehistoric medieval ideas around healthcare and death penalty and gun violence. I mean, I shit on America, as they say, people on the left do all the time. But the greatest thing about America, the best and most unique thing about America, is our natural environment, our public lands, and people can refer to them however they want. Our national parks, the Rocky Mountains, whatever your favorite part of America is. But now what we're talking about is an argument or a fight that's been going on as long as I've been covering politics. When Republicans are in charge of the federal government, they try to destroy everything that's public, really. I mean, when Republicans are in charge of anything, public education, public transportation, they want to privatize everything. But when Republicans are in charge of the federal government and they're in charge of all the agencies that start with the Department of Interior or whatever you want to say, which you know all about these, they have always tried to sell that land for mining and development, building housing, et cetera. Talk to me about your understanding of this fight and what happens when Republicans take charge of the federal government at agencies like the Bureau of Land Management and elsewhere. And I mean, now it's so much worse because of Doge and the cuts that have already been made, which you've documented so well at your Substack, which if people aren't subscribed to, they hate America, I would say. I would say you hate America if you don't subscribe to Wes's Substack.
So if I can jump in there, as liberals, you and I might be critical of America sometimes, but that's because you and I are invested in the process of building a more perfect union, right? Yeah. And so analyzing the problems and analyzing is how we get to the solutions, right? Yeah. Republicans are not invested in that process. Republicans are trying to destroy America in their current form. The Republican Party, as it exists today, the purpose of it is to steal from the poor and give to the rich. They're like reverse Robin Hood, right? So they're just doing like that Russian model where oligarchs come in and part out all the assets of the company to private interests. So it's the same thing that happened after the fall of communism in Russia in the 90s. We saw the military get parted out. We saw all of their public industry get parted out. And so in America, well, what's public? What's owned by the commons? And the big asset that we have in America, again, uniquely in the world, is our public land system. And this, again, like you and I own this. All Americans own our public lands and we all benefit from them, whether we use them or not. It's what creates our country. And that has trillions and hundreds of trillions of dollars of value if you were ever try to attach, some economic value to it. And so these guys are greedy and they want to steal it for their own personal interest because they're assholes. It's that simple.
Talk a little bit about the value it is to be an investor in these lands. It's one of the best investments that we as taxpayers make. You have it really well documented at your Substack, which if people don't read, something terrible will happen to their natural environment near them is what I'm saying. But you have it really well documented in terms of how much investment there is into any of these entities, from national parks to wildlife refuges, and how much we get back in return. It is one of the greatest investments you could make, which is arguably why capitalists and others want.
All of these agencies operate on shoestring budgets. Compared, the federal budget is like $6.8 trillion annually. The Park Service operates on a total annual budget from taxpayers of $3 billion. That's 0.04% of the federal budget. It's less than like a fighter plane. It's just nothing. It's Tracy Stone Manning said last week to me in an interview. She used to run the BLM. That the public lands budget is dust in the federal budget, right? It's just not even there. It's a rounding error. But you look at the return that we get from that. We put $3 billion a year as taxpayers into the Park Service, and we get $55 billion of economic activity from that. The Bureau of Land Management, the most like undertold, manager of public land, and also the largest in this country. Every dollar we invest in the BLM, we net as taxpayers $194 of economic activity. Like these investments are major economic drivers, and they're too small. Any messages that the government as it relates to these agencies is not efficient or is a waste of money or that we can't afford to own these lands is wrong. This is enormously profitable. So again, even if you're not going out and going on a free camping trip or, going hunting and accessing, that kind of thing as normal working America that we can uniquely do in this country and go kill something like that for not that much money, even if you're not doing that, public lands are paying into the federal treasury to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars a year and offsetting the taxes the rest of us pay. So like public lands really benefit this country. And again, you can't put a dollar on the ecosystem values of clean air, clean water, and biodiversity, right? So this is just like, this is the best investment that our country makes. And the idea that we would destroy that for private greed is just sick.
Talk a little bit about, very well said, really well done, but talk a little bit about the damage that Elon Musk and Doge has already done to any or all of these agencies. You've got it, again, really well documented.
So the Republicans have been involved in a multi-decade attempt to just destroy these agencies, just defund the shit out of them. So they get to the point where they're broken and they can point at that, look, it's broken, let's privatize it, right? That's been the plan for a long time. And so you have the National Park Service, for instance, which is just really well-meaning, intelligent people who are scientists and stuff, working for $60,000 a year, which they earn, way more in the private sector, but they're dedicated their lives to a cause, serving the public. And so they're already underfunded, they're already understaffed. And then you had Elon Musk show up earlier this year and basically cause, through various reductions in force or early retirements or forced to wrote emails or just bullying or whatever, caused 16.5% of the Park Service staff to leave. And, you can imagine the parks and all other forms of public land are already understaffed, already operating on a shoestring. You go visit any national park right now, you're going to hit a pothole, you're going to pop your tire, you're going to find an overflowing toilet. It was already like that. And so now this is going to be made worse. And now there's intention to take that already worse that Musk created and take it further. And so Doug Burgum, the real estate billionaire that Trump tapped to run the Department of Interior, he issued an order a couple months ago that said everything in a national park has to remain open. You can't close it. So these parks are now massively understaffed and massively under budgeted. And if they have a trail or a parking lot or a road or a feature that's not safe to use to the visitors, or that the visitors are damaging because the park doesn't have the staff to protect it or educate people well enough, they can't close that anymore without Burgum's personal approval, which is insane. So everything in parks is open right now and there's no staff. And so a really good analogy for the kind of damage that's going to be done is previous government shutdowns, like the one that ran 2018, 2019 during the first Trump administration. I think it was 32 days long or something, 35 days. Yeah. And they ordered that the parks stay open, but they furloughed 95% of the staff or something. Right. And we all remember the news stories and the headlines from that time about all the damage that was caused. And it was toilets overflowed into water systems, polluting them for years. Infrastructure was broken. People died. It was terrible. It was terrible for the parks. And so we're seeing that less severely, but happening more slowly over a longer period of time this summer, as these parks are just losing staff and just shedding staff while everything is ordered to remain open. And it's just a sick, twisted attempt to destroy our national parks. And that's just national parks. The same similar stuff is happening on BLM land, on Forest Service land, and wildlife refuges. The Army Corps of Engineers, which operates recreational lake shores across America, can't afford staff to keep them all open this summer. And so privately, small economies near lakes are suffering because people can't visit them. So if you're just some guy who sells night crawlers, a summer fisherman near one of those lakes, man, you were out of a job this summer. And the effects of this are so significant and so widespread, it's hard to sort of put your hands around all of it at once.
Yeah, I heard some story about some park in Pennsylvania where the surrounding community makes so much money because people come there and go camping, and they come in the general store and all the other places to buy the bullshit that we all buy on our camping trip, and or whatever we need, and they're losing tremendous amounts of money. I mean, that's, and we're just talking about parks and recreation, as you mentioned. There's a whole bunch more there. I feel like this kind of got really put on the map the last few days, and certainly your journalism has helped cover it. But the Senate bill, the Senate budget recreation package, has something in it. This is the big, bad, beautiful bill that the House sent to the Senate. and has an amendment by two Republican senators, one from Utah, one from Montana, Steve Daines from Montana, and the newly even more hated Mike Lee from Utah. And it's a big bad amendment in the big bad bill. In your Substack, you say the Lee Daines Amendment is what it's called, now threatens almost 300 million acres of public land. Tell us about why this is so important. And of course, obviously, as you're hearing Wes saying this and it's enraging you, you can do something. You absolutely can do something. We'll talk a little bit about it, obviously, but Wes always includes the things you can do and who you can call, again, in his Substack post. So it's really important journalism and activism. Go ahead and tell us about Lee Daines. We should call it something worse than Lee Daines Amendment.
I think we should call it the Lee Daines Amendment because it puts their names in it and holds them responsible. And those guys are ultimately accountable to voters, which is what you can do about it. Stop voting for fucking Republicans. Right?
Yeah, but the Lee Daines Land Destruction Amendment, like something.
I love that. The Lee Daines Land Grab Amendment.
There you go.
That plays with the whole Western nature of this, right?
There you go.
So what's going on is they're trying to steal our land. Like you mentioned, this is being done under budget reconciliation. So they have a goal from Trump to cut taxes on billionaires because it's budget reconciliation. Anything that adds to the deficit has to be matched by equivalent savings or new revenue. So they're trying to find new revenue by selling off billions of dollars, millions of acres of public lands. And now there's a lot of nuance to this bill. It's still being written and it's going back and forth a little bit. So we should clarify some terms here. For this budget, for financial year 2026, what they're doing is they want to sell off between 0.5 and 0.75% of the total acreage of BLM and national forest lands. But that total acreage has to exclude any land in Montana because Daines is from Montana and that's his pound of flesh because he's trying to lie to voters here about his efforts to not steal your lands. It's really fucked up. And then there's carve outs for like any forms of protected land, like on that BLM or Forest Service land. So national monument or some other forms are excluded. And running that, it creates a relatively complicated formula. And there's some different maths that have arrived at an effort to create a total of what they're trying to sell. For financial year 2026, for this budget, it looks like they're trying to insert language that would mandate the sale of between 2 and 3.3 million acres of BLM and national forests, right? Now, I'm talking about a larger total. I'm talking about, in stories in my Substack, talking about 295 million acres. And the way that we get there is, again, running this formula for lands that they're trying to authorize for sale as part of some future budget. We get to that larger total. So this year for this budget, we're only going to see, which has never happened before, and entirely unprecedented and terrible, up to 3.3 million acres of sales. But the problem is this isn't just a budget. This is congressional legislation. It changes the law. And so what the language does is it exempts the lands under their formula from Federal Land Public Management Act protections in the future. It carves them out of that. And so it makes them available for sale to create funds in future budgets. And now, because this is budget reconciliation and we're introducing land sales as a measure to offset deficit and offset deficit increases, and at the same time, this stupid fucking bill is going to add $3.4 trillion to the federal deficit and increase like annual interest payments by $550 billion over what they already are. We're creating further problems for lawmakers in the future, even if, say, like Democrats take control of Congress again or take control of the White House. They're going to find themselves in a situation where the deficit is already balanced against land sales and where these lands are already authorized for sale to stop that, and where to prevent further sales from taking place, they'll need to find different revenues to then offset that income. So they'll have to, like, say, raise your taxes to offset that $5 billion or $10 billion they're getting every year from land sales being created by this amendment right now. And so that's the danger and that's the risk. I know there's nuance there. I know it's difficult within like the 295 million acre headline to get back to the fact that this is something that could roll out in the future over time, and that there's precedent and also sort of legal groundwork being established here that could essentially decimate our entire public land system. But this year, again, it's up to 3.3 million acres. But this bill creates that structure under which the rest of that 295 million acres could then be threatened or sold for future budgets. And it makes that likely, again, by adding so much to the deficit, reducing FLPMA protections or eliminating them for these lands and identifying these lands for sale, and creating a structure in which ongoing funding is drawn from public land sales.
Oh man, really well explained again. And what an insidious plan.
It is, and I think this has been something that's been really hard for people to get their heads around. It's total insider baseball, but like I'm dealing with like some infighting between like different conservation orgs over here over like the totals and like what's actually written in the bill and stuff. And you just sort of think to yourself, man, people can't really read policy, and that's frustrating.
Yeah.
And then there's like that cattiness between like conservation organizations where you're like, guys, we're all on the same team. It doesn't matter if like the Wilderness Society got a bigger headline this week than, the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable. Like just clap.
I promise you,
us in the back.
The logging industry, states, and companies are arguing less potentially than the conservation organizations.
Yes,
I mean, the idea
that's exactly what's happening.
To try to understand the different special interests that have been lobbying for these lands forever, and understand how they're lobbying, what it looks like. And we can get into the nitty-gritty of campaign finance, and that's not changing anytime soon. But whether it be the logging industry or the mining industry or the real estate industry, whatever it is, investors and developers have wanted this land for their own profits forever. And their lobbies are very strong and obviously very well funded. On the other side, you've got these environmental and conservation organizations that, they've got some wealthy investors and endowments and so on throughout, but they're not. It's always been harder to compare, these two special interests. And when you're talking about who they're protecting, it's the habitat, it's the creatures and the critters. That's their lobbyist, and we're not that strong.
We're not that strong. I wrote this article years ago, during the Obama administration, basically arguing that like, hey, look at oil and gas. These guys are really good at politics. Yeah. They buy off politicians. They fight dirty. Then here we are, as Patagonia and REI and 1,000 mom and pops that are all trying to do like stuff that we feel is more ethical. And it's like, dude, don't play nice. Play to win, right? Save these places. Let's buy off politicians. Let's bribe them. And there's a clear plan for how to do that. Have you heard about the crazy mountain land swap here in Montana?
Nope.
So there's a private members club in Big Sky called the Yellowstone Club. You have to like show 25 million cash to be considered for membership, and then you're buying like a $50 million house to like get a house there. Members are like Justin Timberlake, Tom Brady, Bill Gates, various Saudi royals, that kind of thing. They did one ski resort and one privatized mountain they got illegally 20 years ago wasn't good enough for them. And so they worked with Steve Daines, our lovely senator, and they just stole an entire another mountain range not far from Bozeman, just north of Livingston, called the Crazy Mountains, by just moving a couple small parcels of private and public around to block all public access. And the entire mountain range is now entirely privatized, and they're going to build a private ski resort just for Justin Timberlake there. And it's like the most undertold story nationally. It's just like,
come on, just for Justin Timberlake. Come on.
Yeah. Just for Justin Timberlake. It's wild.
No, it's not just for Justin Timberlake. You're being sarcastic.
It's for Tom Brady too. It'll just be Tom Brady and Justin Timberlake holding hands, skiing on their entire private mountain range.
I think that you are fighting that kind of dirty the way that you think we need to, and I'm fine with me, man. That is fine. Yeah. I'm looking it up right now. I mean, the Crazy Mountain Range. There's actually a good amount of journalism on this land grab.
There's a ton. And so again, it was the same guy that's trying to steal this 295 million acres of public land right now. It's Steve Daines, our senator here in Montana. And he just stole a mountain range from us personally. Now he's trying to steal public lands for all Americans. These guys have a track record. This is all they do. These are bad people. They lie through their teeth. We just need to stop electing people like this.
God, I am the fucking worst. Because for at least 2 seconds when you described that, because I'm a big skier snowboarder, I was like, how do I get into
it? You got $25 million cash to show to be considered for membership?
I wasn't being absurdly unrealistic, like I will ever have that kind of money. I was thinking more like, whose skis do I got to wax to, what do I barter to get a run? I'm a monster. That is a really important issue that I did not know about. I really appreciate you bringing that to my attention. All right, I want to keep talking, but I'll let you go. Two more quick questions. What do we do? What is your suggestion as to what people should do? I read last night, I hope this is true, that J.D. Vance was talking to a bunch of Republican senators, and he basically, I don't know if there's other reporting on this, I hope it's true, that they're kicking the goal to pass the bill out of the Senate to August. And it was, the deadline was July 4th. But what that said to me was that they need more time. And what it also said to me is that we have more time to do everything we can to tell everybody what is in this bill, and almost not take a day off between then and now, which is hard to say during summer, but that would be great. So what are you suggesting that folks do?
So there's a bunch of stuff, and I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. One, the further we move this bill into the future, we have to remember that Donald Trump is a lame duck, and every single day his power disappears slowly as all of these senators and all of these congressmen look towards the midterms. And now the guys invested in these lands bills, they are vulnerable politically in the upcoming midterms. Ryan Zinke, who somehow was given credit for pulling the 500,000 acres that the House inserted out of that budget before it went to the Senate, is hugely vulnerable during the midterms up here. Obviously, he was the super corrupt Interior Secretary under Trump. He actually got fired by Trump for corruption, which is pretty freaking impressive.
Yeah, he's terrible.
He lied about his military career, lied about his military record. He stole taxpayer funds when he was in the Navy to fix up his house. He got kicked out of the DOI for doing some penny grifting land deal with Halliburton to incrementally increase the value of that same house. Meanwhile, he lives in Santa Barbara, not even in Montana. The guy's just a piece of shit.
Oh yeah.
So our mutual friend Ryan Bussey is running against him for that midterm, and Ryan's a great candidate, and we should vote him in. So that's one thing you can do, is vote for Ryan Bussey.
Got it. We'll have him on soon.
Right. The other thing we can do is make all the rest of these assholes feel as vulnerable as Ryan Zinke. Just call them, call their office, advocate against them, go stand outside their freaking office, donate to their opponents, amplify this stuff on social media, make ourselves heard that we do not want any public land sold, not a single acre, right? Not a single acre of public lands can go, because it creates precedent, and we need every single one to protect the future of our natural spaces here in America. So threaten the careers of these senators. Make them run scared, and they will take this out of the package. We saw that happen in the House. It can happen in the Senate too, right? Now, this is not the only threat to public lands taking place. While this Senate bill is going through, we are also looking at efforts from the Trump administration to break the Park Service and sell the Park Service off.
Right.
We're seeing attacks on the Antiquities Act everywhere from DOJ to SCOTUS to Donald Trump. We're seeing lots of stuff take place. We really, really, really need to be successful in these upcoming midterms. We need to get these assholes out of power, running scared, and out of U.S. politics, until the end of time. If all of us work together, we can do that. And in the meantime, just working that direction will hopefully scare them enough that they won't do this land sale in the short term.
Really well done. We need some language. I'm sure many of those organizations have come up with it. What you say when you call or write. And maybe you and I should come up with something.
It's really straightforward. All you have to say is no public land sale, not a single acre. Fuck you. Say that on the phone.
I love this. I love this. I'm falling in.
The other thing that we can all do, and this is really powerful, and again, there's precedent for this, is remember, we're talking about selling stuff. We're talking about privatizing the National Park Service. We're talking about creating oil and gas leases and timber sales on places where they shouldn't be, or building new mines in places that pollute, pristine wilderness areas. On the other side of that equation, one side is the government, which is not currently doing a good job of listening to us. The other side is private corporations. And private corporations have shareholders. Private corporations need to get insurance. Private corporations need to borrow money from financial institutions. Private corporations are sensitive to their public image, right? And so if we deny those projects taking place through this theft of our public lands, we deny them regulatory certainty by threatening these supporting politicians that will pull these permits in the future. If we deny them legal certainty by funding lawsuits from conservation orgs challenging this stuff in court, if we deny them social certainty by boycotts and campaigns and protests, that we can convince these private corporations that there's better investments and better uses of their money elsewhere, So go do their fucking dirty work there, not here in America, not on our public lands.
Love it.
Right?
Is there a list of those kinds of companies?
Yeah, if you go on my Substack and look at the plan to beat Donald Trump on public lands, I've got the whole thing laid out there.
Dude, you're a national treasure. Your work is really, really important. The work you're doing is vitally important. I'm glad that you're out there doing it, and you can't do it without people's support. People should go subscribe, sign up for a paid subscription, and then you'll learn more, and you'll have all these resources that Wes is working really hard to publish on a regular basis and share his work and tell more people about it. And I will definitely reach out to you again for sure. And I would probably will apply for friendship. I'm feeling. I do it from time to time with guests. You know, I bring them in and I slowly just ingratiate myself somehow to them.
Well, coming out to Montana, you, me, and Ryan will go catch a fish.
Fish with you. You guys both hunt. You bow hunt, right?
Yeah, I do all the things.
You
so do. And as does Ryan. So, you know, if it's got food I can eat on its bones or a nice trophy I can create, you know, I want to be out there hunting it. That helps, again, support that natural environment through funding. Hunters are what supports wildlife conservation. What's
the most dangerous situation you've been in the outdoors? Any near death?
I mean, probably my former career doing motorcycles was pretty dangerous.
Thinking about that, like did you give up on riding motorcycles when you stopped?
I don't ride that much anymore. I have 2 bikes in my garage right now. I had a business in that space, a popular motorcycle blog that was stolen by some business partners, and it just it created just really bad feelings for me. And so I find it hard to separate the joy of riding a motorcycle from memories of having my business stolen and my life destroyed by a bunch of assholes. Yeah.
I'm sorry for laughing, but that's just the way that you said it is. I get it now. We won't even talk about it anymore. But those were the near death. Yeah, motorcycle riding is it's so cool. I really desperately want to ride across the country. But yeah, I would definitely kill myself. I'm sure. You never frozen to death or got attacked by a grizzly or anything?
That bear, I shot that at 220 yards. Got a 1-shot kill on it, but even a perfect shot in a hunting situation doesn't result in an immediate death. So it charged us, and I could not get a follow-up shot on it before it passed. So it went from 220 yards probably into 60 before collapsing, which was pretty freaking scary. It's hard to see that thing behind me, but it's about 10 feet tall. So that would have done some damage had it kept coming. That's a coastal brown bear from Alaska.
Were you hunting for it?
Yeah.
What do you use? A shotgun?
No. So I used a 300 Win Mag centerfire rifle. So I, set up and saw it from several thousand yards, stalked into it, set up at 220 yards, and put a 200 grain bullet through its heart. The bear was never, maybe had 10 seconds to live post that, but bears are really fast. They go about 35 miles an hour. Until that blood drops out of their brain and they actually pass. They're still kicking. So that was intimidating. My wife was there with me, so that was really cool. It's cool having that experience with her, and seeing that through her eyes as well. But that was definitely a scary moment.
Is it true that you guys had just met, but then after you shot that bear, she was like, "You're so hot."
That is not true. That is not true.
Saved that.
Yeah, that's not true at all. I wish.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. I really look forward to catching up and reading all the rest of your stuff, learning from you, and of course, site to support your Substack. Everybody else, go support him right now and do everything we can to save our public lands. Great work, Wes. Thank you so much for joining me.
I really appreciate having me on. And just one more quick message: if you want to upgrade to a paid subscription on that Substack, it really helps me. I'm not able to write about politics or these issues at all for any mainstream outlets anymore. I've been banned from writing about it for outside. Support my work, please, so I can keep doing it. That's one of the most important things we can do right now in our political moment is support independent journalism.
There's a lot of people on Substack. I'm on Patreon. There's a lot of people doing, similar work that are great journalists. I mean, I don't know how much money I spend on supporting independent journalism, but a guy like you, there's just not too many people doing it, and the way that you're doing it, unrestrained. So it's a really good investment. I highly recommend it, and regular listeners know I don't go this overboard for many people. So absolutely get a paid subscription. Go do it right now. It's one of the best donations or subscriptions you could make. I mean, you talk about a lot of people subscribe to these conservative, or rather conservation organizations, environmental organizations that do great work, and they fund lawsuits and so on. But like, there's not enough journalism in your style and the way that you're covering it. Clearly, you got some good sources. So
we can't do anything about any of these issues if we don't know about them. And one of the most important functions of journalism is also to change minds. That's something that I pride myself on. I have a history of changing minds in this space. That's also why I'm running for political office here in Montana. I'm running for state senate in the 2026 elections for the seat here in downtown Bozeman.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So I'm going to call you up and ask you for $450 in the very near future.
Well, I mean, listen, there's a lot more that I could do than money, probably, and bundling it. I mean, it's really important, and that's an important state. Maybe I'll come out and give a rally speech, I'll warm up the crowd for you. I'm good at that.
Come out and help me knock on doors.
I will definitely do that.
Yeah, because we got to get people on our side. We got to get these crazies out of our legislature, and we got to beat the ones that are still there. We need to get legislation through. We need to stop the hatred. We need to stop the disinformation. We need to stop the lies. We need to stop the theft.
Do you think things are changing in Montana for Democrats?
Montana is not a red state. It never has been. Montana has one of the oldest histories of workers' rights and kicking rich people out of here of any state in America. We had a Democratic governor until 4 years ago.
Yeah.
My friend Steve Bullock, John Tester was one of the most effective senators before Tim Sheehy showed up with, a whole bunch of his own money and kicked him out.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. Like, I just can't believe that Greg Gianforte won and that John Tester lost and that Ryan lost. Like, what's going on? I understand a little bit about the history of Montana and the interest there. There's not that many people, but, many big cities or towns, obviously. But I'm just confused. I don't know the politics. I guess.
We're the fourth largest state, and we only have 1.1 million people. The history of politics in Montana is basically that a bunch of big money people showed up, act like jerks. We threw them out eventually, and we were cool for 9 decades. And then we forgot about it, and we let a whole bunch of big money people come back in from outside, and they're acting like jerks again. And so, it's time to learn from our history and throw them the fuck out again, and tell them to stop stealing from us, tell them to stop stoking hatred, and that those are not the values that we have as Montanans. Montanans value freedom, and the freedom to recreate outdoors, the freedom to control our own bodies, the freedom for our kids to go to school where, do things that we have control over, in terms of our educations. And not do things that are dictated to us by, weird creationists like our governor, or, crazy people like Steve Daines who just wants to steal from us, or Tim Sheehy who is engaged in a personal enrichment campaign around wildland firefighting of all things. These guys are just fucking assholes, and we're done with them, and it's time for them to leave. And I'm going to help kick them out, and our mutual friend Ryan Bussey is going to help kick them out too. Man. As are some other people. So if you're watching this, you're from Montana, vote for us, help us do it, donate money. And we can get these guys gone. And we can again set an example for the rest of the country on how this should work.
Love it. I love the fire. And is there a website for your state Senate campaign?
westformontana.com. It's a holding page right now. I haven't announced yet, but just stay tuned.
Awesome. Somebody in the chat said somebody needs to tell Wes Pete doesn't know anything about guns. And I do know something about guns. Ask me something, Wes. Difference between or something. I don't know.
What's the difference between a revolver and a semi-automatic handgun?
Well, revolver, you've got to put the bullets in one by one, or you can take the cylinder out and replace it with a cylinder, but it's as fast as you can pull the trigger, and then it runs out after. How did I do? Am I doing anything right?
Basically the same way semi-autos work. Pretty much all guns, you pull the trigger, you get a shot. There's not some stuff looks scarier than others. That's one of the problems that we're in.
What's the difference? What's the answer?
Revolver is hammer fired, and tends to shoot a more powerful caliber. Semi-autos can be hammer fired, but most are striker fire these days.
If you hadn't interrupted me,
a little less accurate, a little less nice to shoot. They have higher round counts, a little quicker on follow shots on a semi-auto than you are on a revolver, but they fire in the same speed. Pull the trigger, you get a shot.
If you hadn't interrupted me, I was going to say all that. Hammer fired.
That's one of the big issues that we have is the Republicans have been so successful at using guns as like a cultural totem around which they can rally disinformation and a sense of belonging and that kind of stuff. And it's bullshit. And it hurts them as much as it hurts us. The NRA is not your friend. Gun owners are conservatives. They just use it as a way to manipulate you and steal from you, which is the entire purpose of the Republican Party is to steal from the poor and give to the rich. And just disinformation around guns is one of the reasons they can do that. Democrats don't want to take your guns. I have dozens of guns. I don't think gun rights should be restricted whatsoever. But I think we can have a more mature conversation if we get rid of bad actors around what crimes we can solve, what safety we can improve, how we can be a little more responsible and save kids' lives, that kind of thing. I think that's something we can all agree on as Americans. But I want to have that conversation from a place of intellectual honesty and, working towards a solution, not something that reduces rights, takes things away, that kind of thing. And I think that's a conversation that's really valuable to have and one we're going to have if we want to keep our gun rights going forward. So again, the NRA is not engaging in that conversation. They are not your friends. They are threatening your right to own guns by making us look like a bunch of fucking chuckleheads.
That won't stop them from saying all kinds of bullshit about what you believe about guns, even though everything that you just said, that won't prevent them from
they have been talking so much trash on me for so long, and none of it sticks. Those guys are morons. They're paper tigers. No reason to be afraid of the NRA. They're just a bunch of suits down in Dallas. They aren't fucking tough guys. They don't do the thing, come on, guys. There's no reason to be scared of the NRA. Stand up, say what you believe, work to make this a more perfect union, and we can make this a better country. Don't let just some weird interest group show up and threaten us. Who the fuck cares?
I might move there just to vote for you. I'm very inspired.
The NRA threatens our freedom to own guns. Again, they don't work for gun rights. They just use them as an interest for advancing conservative politics. And if we make guns an enemy of half the country, then in the future, when that other half of the country is in charge, we stand to have our gun rights lost.
I sometimes think that
there's a cohesive argument that makes guns relevant to modern America.
The NRA is shorthand for the gun lobby. There's a lot of different organizations and obviously individuals. I sometimes think that their power, specifically to the organizations, has waned, and even campaign finance, like money in politics, isn't as influential as it was for a while. I feel like the ideology that they created, however, is kind of here to stay. So their money in a campaign, I don't think that that's what makes a politician vote for this or that. I think that it's just ingrained now at this point. It's all mythology and the right wing echo chamber, what they believe or don't believe.
They've been really effective at structuring identities and making people feel like they're part of affinity groups or part of sort of cultural identity groups that are under threat by people like you and me. We're so scary. And that's not the case. We are the same as our neighbors. We have the same interests. We all want financial success. We all want freedom. We all want, to go to the hospital and not go bankrupt. We want our kids to get a good education, and that's about it. Right. And making those things look really complicated just breaks the system. And making people look like your fellow Americans look like your enemies just breaks the system. Nobody's your enemy. We all agree, let's just actually sit down and make this a better country instead of just working against each other.
Good stuff, man. Really good stuff. I hope everybody goes and subscribes to the Substack right now, and we will talk again. Wes, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll be back in about 15 minutes with our friend Jay Alcovan, who also might be running for Congress, but I'll hit end right now, and I'm going to say bye to you officially.
All right. Thanks, man.